Listen, you smell something?
Human emotions are materializing in the form of a viscous psychoreactive plasm with explosive supernormal potential.
What a discovery, a psychoreactive substance.
Do you know what this equipment is used for?
Boggle or Super Mario Brothers?
We'll have fun!
Yeah! They're still doing it. Really quite good work there.
My friend, don't be a jerk.
We've got no choice. Call the Ghostbusters.
Super Jackpot!
Welcome to Extraplasm Podcast. It's the only podcast on the internet that's hanging on to the slimmest chance that the psychokinetic energy evoked by mock explosions and fireworks displays in the New York City area, alongside patriotic moods and thoughts, might reanimate everyone's favorite harbor chick for the 4th of July holiday. I'm your host, Jim Maritato, aka Think Maniac on the internet, and I'm thrilled to be joining you this week as we talk with Bob Anderson of the Windy City Ghostbusters about his upcoming online interactive fundraising event benefiting Children's Miracle Network. Bob is a longtime member of the Ghostbusters fan community and the Windy City Ghostbusters, and last joined us on Extraplasm as part of a panel discussing the whoyougonacall.org database that he and others have collaborated on so far this year to help different franchises connect with people in their communities and advertise the things they do. But now, Bob is doing something fun and different over the 4th of July weekend by hosting an interactive live stream of the original West End Games Ghostbusters International tabletop RPG game alongside members of 6 different Ghostbusters franchises. And it's all happening on Twitch on Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and it's all happening for charity. So in a few minutes, we're going to hear a bit about what Bob's been up to and what he's going to be doing with 6 different Ghostbusters franchises and who's participating, etc., and how they're using the Extra Life platform to fundraise for Children's Miracle Network while they play a game online and invite you to participate in it. But before we do that, I have a couple things I want to address, as well as, of course, headlines we need to get into. And the first thing I want to do is offer a bit of a personal thank you. If you've looked at Extraplasm's social media over the last week, you probably noticed that I met people like William Atherton and Steve Johnson in the last week. What you may not know is that I also was in a room with different members of the effects team from Boss Films, from the original Ghostbusters movie, including Linda Frobos, who sculpted Stay Puft, Eric Fiedler, Teresa Burkett, Craig Caton, Hank Mayo. These are all people that I had the opportunity to meet over the last week and who I never thought I'd ever meet, in large part due to the generosity of our friends Matt Sanders and Tom Henry over at TCU Collectibles, aka the Containment Unit Autograph Collecting Group. Matt and Tom were in town in California and around the Los Angeles area for several days, and I had the opportunity to hang out with them, to go over and take the Sony tour with them and kind of, just do the public tour on the lot and have some fun together. And from there, it kind of snowballed into them inviting me to come along and be on the journey with them as they did all their signing stuff. And it led to a host of really cool conversations. And maybe even we'll see in the future, maybe some additional conversations that we get to have on the podcast. But regardless, whether that happens or not, I need to say a huge, enormous thank you to Tom and Matt for letting me come and be a fly on the wall at some of these signings. And to get a view of, sort of what they do and how they do it, as well as to connect with people who, make this very important film that so many of us love, such that we are involved with this podcast each week. And I need to say thank you as well to JD Raymer, who I often talk about as a friend of the podcast and who I love dearly and think is great. JD was part of this journey as well. He made cards and different little trading cards for a lot of the folks involved in the signings and stuff. And he was on hand helping to document things and took my portable microphones to try and document some things with Stuart Ziff when they went to go meet with him, although I was not there for it. And so, there was this sort of awesome thing that went on of watching these folks who have not seen each other in decades come together and sort of talk about this film over the last week. And while doing autograph signing and things for many of you who listen, who paid for autographs and who have been chasing projects and getting them finished for years with Matt and Tom. And so this was a really cool opportunity. It was like once in a lifetime kind of thing. And I'm so genuinely appreciative to Matt Sanders and Tom Henry. If you're listening out there, thank you so much, guys. You really gave me a really unique and awesome experience that I'm so super grateful for. And anytime you want me to convince everybody else to buy autographs from you, you can come right on Extraplasm anytime you like. And everybody out there, buy autographs with Matt and Tom because they don't really make any money on them anyway, and they get you really cool stuff. And if you have stuff that you had ordered that you're waiting to get back from them. If you listen to the podcast and you're somebody who's got stuff out there, if you had stuff you sent in, I may have seen it because there was so much of it. But you should know your stuff is in outstanding hands. Everything was handled so well and so meticulously, and I got to see it all firsthand as opposed to just hear about it in post. So if you don't do signings with TCU, you totally should. And I'm not going to tell you what's happening next because I don't really know. But I have a feeling that there might be some things that come up later on this year that you might want to be involved in. So keep your eyes peeled for the latest signings that come up later on this year, potentially from our friends over at TCU. And thanks again to Matt and Tom because it was a great experience. So with my well-wishing and my public exercises and gratitude wrapped up, let's get into some Ghostbusters headlines.
Still making headlines all across the country, the Ghostbusters are at it again.
Today, the entire eastern seaboard is alive with talk of incidents of paranormal activity.
Phone-in topic today, ghosts and ghost busting.
Extraplasm, read all about it. Ghostbusters Headlines coming at ya.
In official Ghostbusters media news, the big news happening since we talked last is that the formal announcement about the Ghostbusters returning to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios has taken place. A video teaser was put out last week announcing a haunted house inspired by Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It was posted to the Halloween Horror Nights YouTube account last Thursday, and essentially it illustrates that there's going to be another Ghostbusters experience that's more closely tied to Frozen Empire rather than to the original movie, like the last house that they did. There's going to apparently be elements of this house that will involve checking out parts of Ray's occult, looking at different upgrades and interacting with the Ghostbusters lab, going underground to investigate the sewer system, and at the same time running away from Garaka, it seems, since that is who is essentially shown in the commercial for the Halloween Horror Nights house. Maybe we'll get to see some other frozen minions of some sort. If you are looking to do this, if you want to be involved in going and checking out the haunted house and participating and walking through it and having your mind blown, you should know that it will open at Universal Studios Orlando on Friday, August 30th, and the Hollywood, California version will open on Thursday, September 5th. You can actually begin booking tickets now. So if you want to get tickets, you can go and get them from Universal Studios from their website to make sure that you don't miss out on this. And if you do head over to Universal, be it now or later on this summer, know that the first merchandise celebrating the pending arrival of the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire Horror Nights house is now available in the Orlando Summer Tribute Store as well as online. There's a t-shirt and a hat that are now available for $33 and $30 respectively from either the Summer Tribute Store or by going to shop.universalorlando.com. The shirt is kind of funny because it's essentially the poster for the movie, but as opposed to all the folks in red coats standing on a bridge facing down a sewer dragon, they are instead facing the gates of Universal Studios. So it's kind of fun. If you're a Universal fanatic, shout out to Eric Christensen. I know you're out there listening. Then you're going to need this shirt. But I personally, I don't know that I'm going to grab one of these because I haven't actually ever been to Universal. So maybe I'll have to like grab one once I go. But it's really weird. Some people are going to be shocked by that, to know that I live as close to Hollywood as I do. And I've never been to Universal Studios Hollywood, and I've certainly never been to Florida because I've never been to the great state of Florida, which I'm not even sure is great, but we'll go with that because Matt Sanders lives there and he's great. In a related story to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I have been wondering when Adam Savage and Tested might run out of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire things to talk about, and it seems that the answer is not this week. Over on the Tested YouTube channel, there's a new video from Adam and his visit to Frozen Empire set a year ago. And this time he has a chance to get an up close and personal look at Garaka's horns, as well as the brass orb that contains Garaka. He does so along with prop master Ben Hall. This is a pretty cool video. It's pretty short actually, though, only about 9 minutes long. So it's a nice and easy one to kind of go through and gives us possibly the most detailed look we've seen of these props outside of the movie itself. This is also the final video in this series. It's kind of crazy to think about it, but they have been sitting on all this footage for over a year. They were there in June of last year when the movie was being filmed, and we're getting the final Adam Savage video coming out essentially 2 days before 4th of July. So if you haven't seen this, it's totally cool. Go check it out. And if you haven't seen the rest of the Tested series that Adam did, if like you haven't seen most of it for some reason, there's so much great stuff and so much amazing behind the scenes information about how those props were made and built, etc. That you can totally go take a look at on the Adam Savage Tested channel on YouTube. In Ghostbusters video game news, the new downloadable content pack featuring Slimer for Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed is now available. If you're thinking to yourself, wasn't Slimer already in this game? Yeah, he was. But they have given you 2 new skins, one of which is the OG 1984 Slimer, the other of which is a real Ghostbusters inspired version of Slimer. So you've now got 3 different Slimer skins, but that also means you actually have 3 different Slimer, let's say, methodologies, because each of these skins now has a different set of attacks that you can use. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that as a person who enjoys playing as Slimer as he was released with the game when it came out, because I kind of would like to use the OG skin with the standard Slimer attacks, but I digress. These skins look great. The downloadable content pack is really fun to screw around with, and the new ghosts that they've added in, or rather the old ghosts we've known, but in new forms, is pretty cool. There's really great design work done here, and it's kind of fun to watch Slimer's giant butt jiggle behind him as you fly around sliming people. That being said, there's a few other things that you can do as a result of this downloadable content. There's some new colorways for the flight suit that you can put on, as well as a new proton pack that has I believe it's called the Cracked Pack, that is opened up in the back. It's been brass cast and it shoots sparks and things. So there's a DLC out there. It's out a little later than we expected, but it's certainly here. I'm stoked about it. And every time there's a DLC that comes out, it sort of reinvigorates the Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed community. And so people come back out of the woodwork, and it's almost like seeing your friends you haven't seen in a few weeks or a few months. So I've seen a lot of faces online, or rather a lot of names of people online, and a lot of avatars that I know. And that's kind of cool. But I'm also hopeful to sort of see what's going to happen with the rest of the year as a result of this DLC, because one of the other things that's been announced is that there was a contest to determine who the final ghost of this game would be when the last DLC comes out at the end of the year. And it was a contest between Gozer, the Boogeyman, and the Librarian. And in the end, the Boogeyman won it. And so I'm kind of stoked about this. I really want to see what it looks like when, the most feared haunter in Egon Spengler's brain is unleashed within a game that I've been playing for almost 2 years and have a real deep affinity for at this point. And I'm kind of stoked also because I think we might get to talk to somebody who works very deeply on this game pretty soon here on Extraplasm, and find out a little bit more about sort of the process of bringing these characters to life and sort of bringing us the OG versions and the real Ghostbusters versions of characters that we really love. So stay tuned for that, because that may be happening soon. But if you haven't accessed the DLC yet, if you haven't logged in and played Spirits Unleashed since the DLC came out last week, you should probably go do that, because there's a lot of cool stuff to check out there and some real fun to be had. And if you haven't played Spirits Unleashed at all for some reason, what's wrong with you? How many times have I told you, go get this? And especially now, because you can get it for like $19 on virtually any platform that you want. It's really cheap. It's really awesome. It's been out long enough that you can get it with a great discount. So if you haven't checked out the DLC for Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, make sure you do it, because it's totally fun to play as Slimer with the big jiggly butt. Let's talk about merch for a few minutes. It seems like we're not even quite out of like 4th of July yet, and yet the Halloween hits are already coming. And in particular, one thing I'm incredibly excited about, and that happened basically right after we put out the last episode, is that there are 2 amazing Scoleri Brothers rubber masks that have been designed to fit over your entire head, and that are going to be available from HalloweenCostumes.com. On the one hand, we've never really had a lot of Ghostbusters 2 costume or cosplay material officially released. Like, some of you out there are still hoping and praying that somebody at Spirit Halloween is going to decide to make you an 80% size slime blower. And that's probably not going to happen, but, we can all hope and pray. But most of the stuff we get is for Ghostbusters rather than Ghostbusters 2 is sort of my point. On the other hand, if you look at these things, like, not only are they cool because, hey, they're Ghostbusters 2 stuff, they're probably the most detailed retail products featuring Tony and Nunzio Scoleri outside of maybe Mattel's pack-in figures from when they did the Ghostbusters 2 line. These are without question like the most sculpted, detailed thing that they have released for a product that you could buy in a store that like Sony Consumer Products Division has put a stamp of approval on. It's wild. They're outstanding and they look like they came straight out of the movie. They remind me so much of the behind the scenes photos of these characters where they were not yet put through post-processing, so you didn't see any translucent stuff. And it was just the performers inside the suits against black backgrounds. You abso-freaking-lutely need to go check these out if you haven't already seen them, because at $59.99 a piece, they're going to be a steal and total collector's pieces that some of us are going to buy, never wear, and just hang on a wall because they're so damn cool. So to find the listings easily, because they're things that are not yet available on HalloweenCostumes.com and thus will get buried somewhere in the website probably, go over to Ghostbusters News, where Jason Fitzsimmons has fantastic coverage of these and links to each product page. And keep in mind, they're not yet available for purchase, but they are expected to have a release in August. So you should see these in time for Halloween of this year. So if you've always wanted to be a Scoleri brother, this is it, man. 2024 is your year. That's not all Halloween Costumes has out for you this week either. Previously, we've discussed the Slimer and Stay Puft porch light covers and the Slimer and Stay Puft themed lit pumpkin props they're offering for this Halloween. Those products are now in stock and available on the website for purchase. So the Slimer and Stay Puft porch light covers are going to cost you $9.99 or $14.99 respectively, while the light up pumpkin props will each cost you $19.99. So if you've been waiting for those to come out and you've seen those before, either because I've talked about them or because you've seen Jason Fitzsimmons talk about them on Ghostbusters News, they're out. Buy them, get them, have them for Halloween, and enjoy them. And speaking of things that light up, if the recently released mini puffed lamp we discussed last week that's now at Walmart and the light up pumpkins that I just talked about aren't sufficiently brightening up your world, know that Numbskull Designs has announced a new Ghostbusters acrylic desk lamp featuring the one and only Mr. Stay Puft. The dimensions of this are going to measure in at about 8.7 inches in height, 8.3 inches in length, and 3.1 inches in width. So essentially 8 by 8 by 3. This is going to cost you $31.24, which is a very weird price for something. I don't know where that came from, but you can get it from justgeek.com with an expected arrival date around August 24th. And essentially, it is a lot like the Ghostbusters sign that they did, in that it has like a USB rechargeable thing in the back of it, and it lights up and sits on a desk. But in this case, it looks almost like advertising for Mr. Stay Puft that you can have that will glow and light up on your desk. It's pretty cool, but I gotta be honest, I'm not really sure it's cooler than the mini puffed figural lamp that's out at Walmart, because that's the closest thing I've got right now to mini puffed garden gnomes. I got one of those because I'm going to need to put it in the windows at Halloween. If it was weatherproof, I'd probably buy 5 and put them in the yard. But, this is why we need garden gnomes. Somebody out there is listening, right? Right? Somebody's doing this. It's going to happen, I'm sure. Final piece of official merch I want to talk about for the week. There's a new set of backpacks available from a company called Sprayground that actually were first announced last month. And I might have missed this when it first came out, when they put out a backpack that had a Ghostbusters logo on it and a bunch of shark teeth. I admittedly saw it and wasn't really sure what to make of it, because I couldn't decide if it was some sort of weird Jaws Ghostbusters collaboration. Turns out it's not. However, they have a new backpack they've put out that has a proton pack design to it. Also has a No Ghost logo on it. The bag measures at 18 inches by 6 inches by 11.5 inches and has a whole bunch of pockets, including a front zipper pocket, side pockets, a zippered stash pocket, separate velour sunglass compartment, ergonomic mesh back padding, adjustable straps for custom sizing, gold zippers with metal hardware, metal Sprayground authentic badges, slide-through back sleeve connections for carrying on luggage, and the interior has a velour laptop compartment, a mesh organizer pocket, and apparently it's made of 900D polyester fabric. So if you're into this, if you want a backpack that looks like a proton pack, or if you want a backpack that looks like a Ghostbusters logo with the shark's jaws underneath it, which, again, not quite my design, but might be for you, $65 is your price for that, and you can get it over at sprayground.com. You can also take a look at these over at Ghostbusters News if you want to get some quick action to see the two products together so you don't have to go hunting for them, but you can go check that out. outside of official merchandise releases and things, I want to talk about a very important thing, which is the return of Phantasm. Our friends Tony Taylor and Brendan Pearce are back with a new wave of Crypt Creepers toys that are available now for pre-order. They are going to close this Sunday, 7/7. So if you're thinking about acting on this, you need to act pretty quickly. These are an entirely new wave of Crypt Creepers figures that are in the same vein as their pre-existing mini ghosts that I have said previously, like pair really well with different paranormal themed action figures, such as the Kenner Classics that I like to put them with. But there are 5 brand new figures that are currently on offer. And if you don't get them by July 8th, it's too late. They include updated takes on the Terror Tub and Grave Little Toaster figures that they have been making for a while now. But now they come with removable play features, like the toaster has a companion haunted toast mini ghost, which is amazing. It's a mini ghost with a mini ghost. That's wild. Plus, they're joined by the possessed hair metal loving tornado twisted twister and old timer, who's a grandfather clock containing the spirit of an actual grandfather. And rounding out the end of it is the nasty entertainment spirit, a spectrally infected take on the retro classic Nintendo game console that comes complete with a branded Crypt Creepers game cartridge accessory that you can put into it and remove. And they all have new eye sculpts and all kinds of things. These are like essentially updated takes on figures that existed before and a whole bunch of brand new characters too. You can see each of these characters or figures over at phantasmshop.com or on the Phantasm Instagram page. But know this, if you place an order for these figures, you can get free shipping by using the promo code Extraplasm at checkout. And that's not even a joke. Like, I know I've made that joke in the past about, how one day I'm going to get a promo code, but I actually have one. It's pretty cool, right? Tony and Brendan at Phantasm are offering Extraplasm listeners free shipping on these figures to celebrate their relaunch and to introduce their new cast of characters to fans. So my advice is take them up on the offer by locking in your purchases before the end of this weekend. And one final thing I'll say here is that I have just received a package with these 5 new figures in it, and I'll be posting a kitchen counter review on Extraplasm's YouTube, likely within the next 24 hours of the podcast landing on social media for you or on your podcast platform of choice. So if you want a better look at these before you buy or before you use promo code Extraplasm to get free shipping, keep your eyes peeled for a review landing on YouTube in the next day. It'll probably be something that you can watch other than fireworks on the 4th of July. And just as a reminder, the other thing that you sort of know about that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is that, of course, you should tune in this weekend to Bob Anderson's event on Twitch. Make sure that you're tuning in to twitch.tv/BobAfterDark at 8:30 p.m. EST if you want to check out what we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So with headlines wrapped up, let's go now to my conversation with Bob Anderson as we find out a bit about how he'll be fundraising via Extra Life to benefit Children's Miracle Network alongside 6 different Ghostbusters franchises this weekend. Joining me on Extraplasm Podcast, returning to the show after a time away, but back with something cool, exciting, fun, charitable, and entertaining to tell us about, and interactive if you're out there and want to do something this weekend. Bob Anderson of the Windy City Ghostbusters, better known to some of you as Bob After Dark, is rejoining the show. Bob, how are you doing?
Oh, hey there, podcast fans. It's me, Bob. Thank you for having me on, Jim, to talk about something really amazing this week.
I'm so stoked that you're back because you reached out to me about what we're going to talk about. And I said to myself, it's really cool because we talked last week about Starlight Children's Foundation and one charitable organization that helps kids. And then you reached out to me and told me about another one that does things in a very similar vein of like providing play and like outreach and entertainment for kids in hospitals that I also think is really cool. And I was like, wow, it's almost like these two things were almost made to go together. I could have planned better. But you did the planning by reaching out, which means we all win. So thank you for doing it.
Oh, of course. Anything I can do to get the story out there a little bit more and get some more eyes on the fundraiser on Saturday. That's everything I could do. And you were the first person I thought about because I'm a big fan of your podcast and you're a voice of the people, voice of the fans.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm the voice of the fans as much as for some people, the voice they hope would just stop chattering and would just buzz away. I'm kidding. But I am happy that you're here because I'm happy to help spread the word to those who want to hear my voice. We are going to chat about your contributions you're going to be making to Children's Miracle Network via the Extra Life platform as you're hosting something pretty cool, right? You've got a tabletop game you're going to be doing live with how many different Ghostbusters franchises?
6 franchises all scattered throughout the country.
Right on. And this is what game are you playing? Just sort of like fill people in on what it is you're doing.
Many moons ago, if people aren't familiar with the term TTRPG, or PMP or RPG, tabletop RPG or pen and paper, think Dungeons and Dragons, but in the 80s, a company called West End Games made Ghostbusters, the RPG. And over the years, it has laid extremely dormant, and a wonderful resurgence from a podcast called Interdimensional Cross Rip, I believe it was called. Yeah, they started playing a session and it got a lot of eyes on it again. And I am a natural born storyteller. So here I am hosting. This is my second time running one. The first one I just kind of came up with on the fly. It was Memorial Day. I was stuck in because of health reasons. And I'm like, I bet I could get 4 or 5 Ghostbusters together to do this with me on the day of. And I did. And then I did another stream of playing Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, and that worked out really well. So I was like, okay, Independence Day weekend, let's do another session of this. I'm hosting the game. I have all the same franchises returning from last time. So Circle City, Hudson Valley, Atlanta, Windy City. And then this time and Peoria. Sorry, James. Peoria. And this time, Ryan from New York City Ghostbusters.
Yes.
He's coming along this time to actually play because he couldn't the last time. And I made his NPC as a smelly character in the game because he couldn't play. So I made him smelly. So he's coming back for his redemption round, if you will. And it's really cool because I'm able to do this, and a lot of fans get to interact with that because it's not something you see very often in the fandom. Interdimensional Crossrip had their big sessions and that was it. And I was like, come on, man. So when it comes to Ghostbusters content, this is the one thing you don't see a lot of.
Right.
And I was like, maybe Ghostbuster fans would be into this. And it has definitely proved me right in the 2 sessions I've done with this. So I'm very proud of it.
It's interesting that you sort of talked about the cross rip and sort of how this is a game that laid dormant for a while, because I knew about the West End Games game. I never played it, but it was something that was produced in the 80s, and there were offshoots for it. There was like a Ghostbusters 2. There was like an expansion pack with
several expansions. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like all of a sudden it just, over the years it went out of print. It didn't exist anymore. And then what I think inspired Troy Benjamin and Chris Stewart over at the Interdimensional Crossrip to pick it back up was that there was a thing called Ghostbusters Resurrection, which was essentially an update to the game that was done by a podcast called The Nerdy Show, I think. And at some point, I can't remember entirely, like this is like going back into my brain of old Crossrip episodes, but I believe like they had a powwow session where the person who did Resurrection came on and joined them. And that's when Troy and Chris during the pandemic then started doing their own paranormal, I think it was called Peacock, was the paranormal contracts or paranormal commission or oversight commission or something. I can't remember. I'm going to mess it up and somebody's going to message me and go, how did you forget this? But maybe it'll be Troy or Chris. But sorry, Troy and Chris. But like, you're right. Like, it's kind of funny. It was a thing that kind of fell by the wayside and was known by, I think, some of the most OG ghost heads in the community, because it was something that existed as a role-playing game that wasn't really targeted at kids as much as it was targeted at like teens and young adults. And so for those of us who were like the kids who came up with Real Ghostbusters as a cartoon, it was like way above our heads, So I think it's kind of cool because it's something where you're illustrating a game that you can still play today. And in fact, if I'm not wrong, like, can't you get most of this game and print it out yourself at this point?
Everything is available online. West End Games, if you still exist in some subsidiary, please don't sue me. But you can find all the resources online, this is a side conversation, but this is why it's really important to preserve things and why some piracy laws need to be a little bit more laxed.
Yeah.
We're blessed that there's people out there, because copies of this are just impossible. You're looking at almost $1,000 for if you were trying to collect these things. I've seen them in person. My buddy Jacob at Circle City has them, so I've seen them, but they're extremely expensive, extremely rare. And so all the sources are available to you. And when you get it, it is the most simplistic rule system in a game I've ever seen. And I've been around tabletop gaming in both like miniature, Monopoly, stuff like that. I've been around that my entire life, or an even more hobbyist board gaming like King of Tokyo, whatever, Dungeons and Dragons. I've been doing this for my entire life, essentially. Mm-hmm. So, you take the rule book of Ghostbusters and I'm like really intimidated because I don't know the system. And I'm like, oh God, I don't do a lot of the RPG systems, but I have in the past. These days, I just don't have time. I look through that and I'm like, oh my God, why is this not being reprinted now? It's so simple. And I'm like, in a world where D&D is super acceptable for like people to play, thanks to like popularity of Stranger Things and Crit Roll and whatnot, you would think that this would, and Ghostbusters is as popular as it's ever been. So I was just really excited to be able to have the system and be able to play it with people. And, the Ghostbusters fandom deserves to have that. And the other problem is, if you're going to play it with friends, you need to have the one friend that's willing to sit out and not actually, bust the ghost, but tell the story. And I'm one of the jerks that are willing to sit out and tell the story. So I'm kind of a hot commodity.
No, I mean, it's true though, right? You have to be willing to be a narrator and sort of organize what's going on, and it's you become a lore master of an adventure in some ways. And it's not something everybody wants to do. And in this case, like, it's important that you have somebody who knows enough about Ghostbusters to be able to tell a compelling story as you do it. Like, yes, there's a lot of things about your adventure that are going to be driven by the cards that are drawn and the dice that are rolled. But, how that story gets told and what you're telling people to do and how you implement the system around you is what makes good dungeon mastering happen, right?
Exactly.
But I think you touched on something really important, which is like, I think it's interesting that we don't see an updated version of this game, because I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it. Most Ghostbusters games that exist are not very good.
No, you get 2008 to the 2008-2009 the video game,
right?
Spirits
I didn't mean
Unleashed.
Video game. I meant
you're talking like the board game. I like the first board game enough.
It's fine, but like, to be fair, like, it's a little more like driven as a board game rather than a full blown RPG, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. This is a whole different experience. I'm hoping with my game that between me and if you go back through Interdimensional Cross Rip or whatever, if people are looking through those archives, I'm hoping some RPG company hears this and they're like, okay, we're going to go buy the Ghostbuster license so we can reprint this, because I think it's overdue. It's more popular to do these RPG games now than it's ever been. And Ghostbusters isn't going to probably get more popular than where we're at right now.
Right.
So now's the time to strike, bring it back into publishing. I guarantee you're going to have people that don't even play the game. They're going to buy it because they're collectors. So that's one of my main reasons I'm doing this. I'm like, well, not one of the main reasons, but I should say it's one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I'm like, maybe I could bring some attention to somebody to buy the property to be able to do the game.
I think that this is all really fascinating because if you go back to when Dungeons and Dragons was made, or like when a game like this was made, I don't really think that you had like dedicated hardcore role play gaming stores where people would go and play.
Oh, they were, but you would get beat up for going. And I'm not saying that, like, you had, and this is a story for not this type of show, but you had the Satanic Panic going around because of D&D.
Well,
and
sure,
so all RPGs just got a bad rap off the top. And then you also had like, being nerdy at that time was the big no-no. So if you don't want to get stuffed in a locker, you don't tell people you're hanging out at that weird game shop where the owner wears a robe,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I tend to think that like D&D in my experience in the 80s and 90s was something that happened more around comic book shops and people's houses.
Yes.
Right. And that like what gaming existed, especially in the 90s, was like, oh, it's Magic the Gathering, it's collectible card game stuff, and it wasn't so much RPG stuff. Whereas now, like even in my town where I live, there's a place within a 10-minute, drive that hosts Dungeons and Dragons multiple nights a week. It is a game store that is full of different tables people can sit at and take a board game off the shelf, or otherwise they can join into an adventure that's going on every single week, and there's rotating dungeon masters coming in. And like, to me, like that's a completely different thing to consider than any other point in my life where I would think about an RPG game being able to be marketed and be successful, because there's venues to go play it. Like there's places to go and interact with other people and experience it, and then decide it's cool enough to pick it up off the shelf and be like, hey, we should bring this one home. You know? So like, it's weird. It's like having listening rooms for music again.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit like about how the game unfolds? Like for people who've never played the Ghostbusters tabletop game, like what is it like?
So especially if you're in the Ghostbusters cosplay hobby, like I'm assuming most people are that listen to your show, or, you know, whatever. If you're in the Ghostbusters hobby and you're throwing on your flight suit and you're wearing your proton pack, imagine doing that, but you don't have the laws of fiction in front of you. You know what I'm saying? Like your proton pack doesn't work. And how would, let's just say Bob Anderson, how would Bob Anderson react if this proton pack actually worked? Right. So you take Ghostbusters, the tabletop game, and you use a dash of imagination. Now you yourself become this Ghostbuster that you cosplay as, but it's you, and you determine your strengths and your weaknesses as a character. You determine how good you are at equipment, or if you're a driver of an ecto, or, you know, Jacob, for example, his player card always comes to mind because he wanted to be the slime person. He just wanted to learn about ectoplasm. So his character specializes in ectoplasmic residue, like studies. You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So like whatever you want to be in the Ghostbusters universe, you can in this game. And I'm, you know, I've come from a background of knowing, you know, stand up storytelling and stuff. So I'm able to kind of like develop that very well. You know, I'm kind of spoiled in that regard that I've had training and being able to tell a story. Right. But, you know, I'm able to take what these people want to do and I could create this world in front of them. Yeah, I don't have moving images, but, you know, I can use my voice to tell a story. And, you know, you just kind of immerse yourself in that. You have a little dice pool. So each one of your stats, you know, it attributes to like what dice roll you have to do. And then you have one dice that's considered the ghost die. So you roll your die, and depending on if it's success or a fail and your ghost die pops up, something's going to go awry in a wacky way. So it's, you know, not as serious as like a Dungeons and Dragons game, which there's nothing wrong with D&D by any means. I'm not knocking it, but D&D has a learning curve to it. You know, you really need to sit down and learn rules, how your character class works. Ghostbusters, I could teach you the game in about 15 minutes and you're ready to go. It's a D6 system, which means you only need a normal 6-sided die to play.
Right.
You don't need 100 dice pools to play the game. In fact, my dice that I play with, because I don't have the originals and I didn't get when they did the re-release of them, I went on Amazon and I found a set of 12, or I didn't, Jim Norman did, or Jacob, I can't remember, but somebody found mood slime colored dice that were perfectly slimed. And so that's what I use. And I just have one that is, I determine the ghost die by putting a little dot on its face when I played the one time I had a chance to play it.
You want to laugh. I actually own the ghost die.
Oh, sure.
It's the only piece of the game that I own.
That's funny.
I saw it online on eBay at one point for like $8. And I said, oh my God, I could own the ghost die, the most lucrative part of the entire game. The one piece that you can't just like go and print. I could just buy that. And then if I ever want to play the game, I have the ghost die. And I was so excited about this. And I actually reached out to Chris Stewart. And I was like, hey, look what I got. I got the ghost die. And Chris responded. He was like, just be careful. That's not actually engraved on there. It's just printed and it rubs off inevitably.
It rubs off.
Like, oh, man. I was like, I shouldn't have bought this damn thing.
No, so that's, you know, that's just, it's one of those things, and it's such an easy system, and all you know, that's it. And when I tell you your imagination is your own limit in a game like this, that's literally your other than the simple rule base that you have. And then each GM, what they call the game master, or ghost master, I think is the technical term. They'll determine like what's your limitations. And for somebody like me that would host the game, I try to make things a little bit more lighthearted, which was what I was getting at. I try to make my games a little bit more, there's an edge to it, but they're a lot more fun in regard to.
Gotcha. So in some ways, like, let's say in a typical game, if you're the ghost master, you've got to create a setting for your players, right? A ghost for your players to bust, obviously, you would think, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you my first session, and you guys can actually go find this on the Bob After Dark YouTube video. You can watch the whole thing or listen to it. My first setting was after the events in Frozen Empire, all of these Ghostbuster franchises started popping up all over the world. And Winston got very just upset and tired with dealing with needing to send emails out to everybody and trying to keep all the franchises together. So once a year, they're hosted in New York City at the Javits Center is what was called BustCon or BusterCon. I can't remember the name I used, but it's literally put on by the OGs.
It's like a professional development conference.
Exactly. And every franchise is required to send at least one Ghostbuster there to learn about new tech. They have to make an appearance at a seminar. And then in the story I made was that Ray Stantz had a traveling paranormal museum that would go to these things, and you could go to it and count as it'll count as your seminar. Now, the heroes that played in the last story, long story short, me, the NPC, because, my ego's not going to let me get away with not being in the game in some regard, even though I'm not playing, that Bob, the NPC, released Kronos, the Greek god of time, that was sealed in a grandfather clock. And Kronos appeared out of the clock and made time freeze across the world, except for our heroes. And you'll find out why later they weren't affected by the time freeze. And so the story was that they were getting into the convention was half the session because we got a little feral at points. And I mean, there was just nonsense, and it's hilarious. And so they get into the convention, they're doing their thing. And then at one point, Peter Natalia tases Bob, the NPC, to save him. It's, so that was the session I made. Now this one, I'm not going to reveal too much because I want people I have a big surprise coming for it. I will tell you that it is in the state of New York, but I'm not going to tell you what.
Okay.
But it's not in New York City. So that's the only hint I'm going to give.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to offer up suggestions. It's either on Long Island in a haunted pizza shop. That's where the possessor went after it was in the pizza. And that's the premise of this, is that the pizza jumped in Slimer ate the pizza, and then Slimer went to Long Island and went to a pizza shop. Or it's Sleepy Hollow.
You're gonna have to watch to find out, Jim.
All right, I will, and then I'll be jealous that I'm not playing. To be fair,
now see, here's the thing. I'm going. So that's one of my announcements I'm gonna make during this. Is I've been getting a lot of people reaching out to me with the same sentiment. I'm jealous I'm not playing because you yourself might be interested in playing, but your franchise might not be. And trying to find somebody to actually game master the game is kind of hard to do. And I have the ability here now to where Bob After Dark is now partnered with Extra Life, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
And I'm able to use my voice to fundraise at the same time because I'm very blessed to have the platform I do with Bob After Dark to be my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to give back the same way I was when I was ghostbusting. I'm not ghostbusting a lot these days, like full flight suit, boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
This is my 10th year doing it. I've done thousands of events. This year's been really challenging for me health wise. So Windy City still runs and does their thing. I'm just not as heavily involved as I usually am. And Bob After Dark takes up a good chunk of my time these days, whether I'm streaming or anything else. So I'm like, well, what could Bob After Dark do to be able to give back? Because I'm blessed to have my platform I do. I've always been somebody who wants to do some kind of fundraiser, help somebody out that is in need. And Extra Life just kind of fell in my lap by complete accident. And I have so much fun interacting with these other Extra Lifers. We have our own community on Discord. I have friends now that are all Extra Lifers, and we have time that we've set aside to play games together. And it's so much fun.
I've been wanting to know more about Extra Life. I'll be honest with you, because I've said this on the podcast that the number of hours that I've played Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed literally is like 4 digits long. And none of it has been for charity. It's all been entirely just me being overly enthusiastic about one game that lets me be a Ghostbuster whenever I need to go blow off steam, which apparently is a lot. Because that number has 4 digits to it. But tell me a bit about this. Like, how does Extra Life work? Like, what is the premise of Extra Life and how do you interact with it as a content creator? And then I guess, like, how do viewers interact with it? Like, what is the incentive there to interact and engage it?
So let's say whenever I do my fundraiser, all of my tip me the creator or the, how I make money goes away on my page, and everything comes up that all of my tips go to the Extra Life like chart that's on my page. My bot no longer talks about, here you can go here to buy me a coffee, whatever. It talks about Extra Life, right? So what Extra Life is for content creators to raise money. They call it playing games and helping sick kids at the same time is like their tagline. And I fell in love with live streaming so much this year because it's like a new avenue for me that I've never had before. Video gaming, at least through Twitch, because that's monetized, and I have a lot of fun doing it. And I have a great community that follows me. I thoroughly wanted to, I was like, well, I'm enjoying this. And one of the new recruits in Windy City, his name's Dave. Dave happens to be the team captain of the Chicago Extra Life Guild. Gotcha. And so when he came, because I've always seen the Extra Life booths at cons. In fact, It's funny because Dave has a video of me talking about like doing a who you gonna call thing at the Extra Life booth, like my second year being a Ghostbuster at C2E2 Chicago, which is hilarious. I this year at Anime Central, ACEN in Chicago, they had a booth there, and I messaged Dave and I'm like, hey, I'm really interested in this Extra Life thing. There's a booth here. Are you working? He's like, no, but one of my people that help run the group, Mel's there. Why don't you go talk to her? And I was just like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. Right. And then I went and I talked, I got the whole rundown of how it works, which is, you play the game, you set aside, you dedicate your time. There's Extra Lifers that fundraise all year round. When you're playing your games live, all your donations will come in. I don't see any of the money. It doesn't come to me. It goes directly to Extra Life through my little link, which is like extralife.com/BobAfterDark, I think. You go there, you pledge your amount. I get notified that you pledged, and then I do something special for you. My first stream was I was doing fortune cookies off the cuff, like for people that donated $5 or more. I don't remember what I did the last time. This time I'm doing something really special, which might be more fortune cookies, but randomized.
So what do you mean by fortune cookies? Do you mean literally?
I read fortunes as if they were fortune cookies to fans. Sometimes people make me eat a snack. Whatever it might be. I might have to tell a joke or something, like what I call paranormal puns on stream.
Have you considered doing like interactive elements where people could pledge in order to influence the dynamics of the gameplay session?
No, but now that is a note for a future one. A little late now because I'll have to figure out how to implement that. But for my next one, I will definitely do that. And something I'm going to be doing. So we fundraise all year round. And then one day out of the year, Extra Lifers dedicate to what they call the Extra Life Day, which is you spend 24 hours streaming nonstop. Gotcha. And what you do is you play for 24 hours straight. And there's things that pop up throughout the time, like a prize wheel. You might donate $5 and then I got to spin the wheel. That's going to torture me. One of which is like, I've seen other Extra Lifers do like, I'm going to lick an envelope for every $1 that gets sent to me. And so they'll just lick envelopes, like, cause it's gross. I've seen the one my buddy Gory was just on before I came on here. I was watching his stream for a bit, and like every $5 he gets donated, he drinks sriracha straight from the bottle or licks a a brand new Band-Aid, whatever it might be, silly stuff. But I am definitely going for our 24-hour stream. You brought it up and I'm going to implement it somehow where people can do it, because I think I'm not going to run a 24-hour session, but there will be a Ghostbusters RPG moment during my Extra Life stream. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, because what made me think of that was that, you know, a lot of streaming that happens for something like Extra Life is kind of like Twitch streaming. It's like people playing a game,
Yes.
right? And so it's like the environment they're in is already predefined for them. Like you're choosing to play Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, and so the parameters are defined for you. There are these many levels, there's these characters to play, and it's a locked-in system. But what you're talking about with tabletop and RPG like this is it's all narrative. It's all storytelling,
Yes.
right? And so it's like everything exists in everybody's head as opposed to existing as some predefined set of stuff within the confines of the like rules of the way physics work within the gameplay environment, if we put it that way. And that's kind of like what the system is, right? Like the way that like actions unfold, the order they unfold, how people roll for, you know, for priority or whatever it is. But all of that is just like the mechanics of the gameplay. The rest of it is all invented by you. And so that's why I was like, whoa.
Oh yeah, no, I'm the one thing that I'm now mulling in my head is somebody donates $5, you automatically get a ghost die added to your roll.
Like it could be that, or it could also be things like if you donate $10, the police department comes down and decides to try and turn the firehouse into a pile of bricks and takes away the proton packs.
I love it.
You could change the entire dynamic of the game and let people who are watching influence the challenge for the people who are playing. It'd be kind of cool.
Now, Jim, I wasn't expecting to be taught something here, but you were giving me the most brilliant idea. I'll be using that going forward. It's fantastic.
I was not trying to be a teacher, I swear.
No.
It was just the
That was
question.
fantastic suggestion, sir. Appreciate that. But no, I you know, Extra Life is this really cool thing because Bob After Dark is now able to give back.
Yeah.
And that is what my ultimate goal is I wanted to be able to give back with my platform where I'm not wearing a flight suit. Now some people might be like, well, Bob, you're still doing Ghostbusters related media because my 3 fundraisers I've done so far are 2 Ghostbuster RPG sessions and a game of Spirits Unleashed. And it's like, you know, I've been around the Ghostbusters community like as a whole for 10 years. 80% of my fan base has like that normally comes in as new listeners are all from Ghostbusters or they're connected to the hobby somehow.
Right.
And it's like, well, I'm sorry, guys. I've successfully migrated my way through this community for 10 years and I've driven myself crazy doing it. I might as well exploit you guys a little bit more.
No, but I mean, look, I think there's something to be said about finding what brings you joy and finding where you can have the most impact. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like I jokingly said to somebody, they said, are you going to wear a flight suit out to something? And I was like, no. And they said, why not? And I was like, I might be retired from flight suiting. And they said, really? Why? And I was like, I have a podcast every week. I was like, I'm trying to celebrate Ghostbusters every week and be useful to people who are listening. And that means that I'm not spending time on things like, you know, building the roof rack that I kept saying I was going to build from the parts that I have in my garage. Like there's places where I recognize that I can prioritize my impact and the things that I bring to people that, you know, are helpful. And I think that you making the same kind of decision and saying, hey, I may not be doing flight suiting as much, but I can certainly celebrate the fandom I love and leverage the people I know within it to help raise funds is just no different than, you know, when somebody like the LA Ghostbusters partners with Starlight and goes to a convention, right? Like it's not really any different. It's just in a different venue, you know, and I think it's really cool. So,
right. But I was getting at something I wanted to announce going forward because I had a lot of people reaching out to me and they're like, I'm jealous. I want to play. And I'm like, I don't know how to run a game with more than 5. 6 is going to be a challenge, but I am not doing any more than 6 in one session because now somebody is not going to get the screen time that they deserve. Mm-hmm. So something I'm thinking about doing is, you know, maybe every other Sunday, because it's usually my day to myself. If a Ghostbuster group wants me to GM a game, I will make each player donate $10 to Extra Life. I'll either live stream it for them or not, depending on their preference. Right. And I'll run the game for them and I'll teach them how to play. You know, that's, I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but that is something that's an exclusive to you, Jim. I haven't announced that to anybody else yet, but I'm going to give it an opportunity because it's like, I don't need to make money off of Ghostbusters. That's something I will never do. And something I will never want to do is make money off of this for myself, but I can make you take care of sick kids So, you know, if you're looking to play Ghostbusters the RPG so bad and you're not a part of the core group that initially did it, and the reason the players that were doing it now, they're all people that were working on me with the database project, and James from Peoria has been playing Dungeons and Dragons for like 20 plus years.
Gotcha.
And he has an RPG background, so he kind of came in to like sit down and help the setting move along, and he knew how the role-playing aspect worked. And Jim Norman was in the first session, and that's just because I needed a Windy City representative, and Jim Norman he played one game with me before, and I'm like, Jim Norman. Plus he had a professional Zoom account that I could abuse. So I could bring it. Sorry, Norm, I love you. I was just like, okay, he's got a professional Zoom account. I'll use that and it'll be great, you know? So I needed a Windy City representative because that's my home team. And so now it's like, I can't, you know, I had between the different players that were like, people are reaching out to them wanting to play. I've had like 20 or so Ghostbusters being like, well, how come I can't play? And I'm like, I can't control 20 of you. If you do that, I'm going to lose my mind. I have a lot of hair on my head, but I don't feel like going bald over this. So, you know, I'll announce it soon, but what I'll do is I'll, you know, have like a ticket price and the people would donate, send me a screen cap showing that they donated. And if there's 5 people, that I made $50 for Extra Life. And in case people were curious, Extra Life is their charity goes to working with the Children's Miracle Network hospitals.
Right.
And here in Chicago, for me, it would be Ann and Robert Lurie's Children's Hospital in Chicago. That's the one I work with, which is a little different from Windy City that works with La Rabida, but Bob After Dark does Extra Life, and that's just how that panned out. So all the money I raise, 100% of it goes to Extra Life, and then they disperse it to the Children's Hospital. And they were born from that, so the money goes to the hospital regardless. So it's a really cool thing. And like, we have somebody on our board that is like our connection straight to the hospital. And they're, you know, Jackie's wonderful, love her. See her all the time on the Discord. She's listening to this podcast. So it's really amazing how I'm able to do this and be able to raise some money for it. And I get to have a good time doing it. My last session was so much fun. I still, you know, there's a running gag within the original group of people playing that like Peter tased me, and I will never let him live that down because of all the actions Peter could have done from Hudson Valley to the Bob NPC. He tased him.
Yep.
So I made his car go boom. He got it stolen from Sam Hain.
I want to throw out an idea for you.
Hit me.
Which is, I think what you're describing is almost like Ghostbusters International Academy. And it's like an opportunity to come learn how to play the game and figure out how to, like, you know, if you're coming in for your first session, if you ran them that way for a while, and it was like different teams came in for each weekend and you did 5 of them and they each donated, it would be like Ghostbusters International Academy. And that would then teach people the game so they can go off and run their own Extra Life stuff. You could build an entire network of this, of people
now,
who are
Jim, you see, here's the thing. I didn't expect to be coming on here taking notes from you, buddy. I thought I was just going to be talking about my stream. And now I'm like, man, why am I not picking your brain on ideas, Jim?
I don't know if you're really legitimately saying that or if I'm just being
no, I legitimately mean that. I'm not being sarcastic, buddy. Because I'm legitimately just wrote that down, the International Ghostbusters Academy.
But like, I think that would be something where you could have different groups come in. They would learn how to play the game because it's something that is hard. You know, I think you have to play through it to really learn how to do it. And it's intimidating, right? To pick up a tabletop system that you've never played before and try and teach it to others based only on the manual. Like, it's kind of intimidating to do that. You're like, wow, there's a lot of book to read to kind of figure out what to do. And so it would be kind of neat if you did that. At the same time, each of those becomes like a play session people can participate and contribute to. And you're building off to the races, building something totally new and cool. That's interactive storytelling. I love it.
I think that's a plan. No, and I know there's people out there that do it professionally and run games, and I'm more the power to them. But it's like, I don't need to make money off of it. For me personally, I'd rather just see Extra Life see it. So it's like, you know, I might have to play a couple cringy sessions with folk to kind of get them started, especially if they've never done an RPG. So it's like, I'll just have fun with it and take care of people in the process. Because at the end of the day, the reason why I picked Extra Life for Bob After Dark, this is going to be like an emotional thing, so bear with me. As a kid, I was born an extremely sickly child. I was born deaf, essentially. I couldn't barely walk. I had to have Forrest Gump like style, shoes with a brace. Mm-hmm. I was born with a jacked up right eye, and my mom and dad had to utilize professionals at a children's hospital to keep me alive. Mm-hmm. And 33 years later, I'm sitting here and I'm having this conversation with you. And I want some kid to be able to be here 33 years from now being like, hey, I made it through, in this case, Anna Robert Laurie's Children's Hospital in Chicago, and I'm running, my laser sock campaign, because I guess in 33 years from now, laser socks are a thing. Don't get rid of that. We'll keep that in there. We're running a fundraiser for laser socks to benefit, the Children's Hospital. And I could look at it 66 at the ripe age of 66. Someone will be preserving my head in some kind of jar, and I'll be like, I did it. I made it, that makes me very thrilled. I was blessed to have that. I had extremely, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the decisions my parents had to make with the Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
I'm very honored to be able to have this opportunity to be able to give back now and take care of these kids that really desperately need it. And I want to give somebody the chances that I was. I was fortunate. My dad had a really good job and was able to send me to good doctors, but not everybody has that opportunity, you know? And so I want to help somebody get to that point, because I want to see people here 33 years from now, like I am, changing people's lives. I have fan bases that are extremely dedicated to me. And I'm trying not to cry here, but I'm honored. I'm blessed to have what I got. And so I want to be able to give back and give that opportunity. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why Bob After Dark has a partnership with a charity now that's separate from what I do with Windy City Ghostbusters. And it's really cool. Sorry, Jim, I didn't expect to get emotional there.
No, you're cool. I think that it's really awesome that you're doing it, and I appreciate the motivations that you have and, the personal connection to it. I think for a lot of people who do charitable work under the banner of Ghostbusters, there's personal stuff to it, whether it's because you're personally motivated by the cause you're serving or just the fandom that you love. There is this desire to give back and do more. And that's something that, we've talked about with LA in the last couple of weeks on the podcast. When Eric Reich was gone recently, he talked about the desire to celebrate the charitable work that Ghostbusters does. And so I think that, ways that people can create more charitable giving under the banner of Ghostbusters from home are great. And that's part of the reason I think this is so cool, is that, it's something where I want to find out more about Extra Life, as I said, because I want to figure out how to connect it with Spirits Unleashed, because I don't know why I'm not doing that.
We're doing it now. Jim Norman runs, because through me, I pressured Jim Norman into doing it. So now Windy City Ghostbusters has signed up through Extra Life to play things like Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. Or if people really want to, they could watch me play Ghostbusters, the original retro games, and be really bad at it. And then outside of that, like Norman plays like Overwatch and stuff on there, or fill in the blank game that comes to mind. And it's okay, because it's not Ghostbusters in universe, but that's what we primarily do. So what I will do is I will make sure I could get you in touch with your Extra Life people in your neck of the woods. And
cool.
You run the stream, and I can give you a hand with whatever I can give you a hand with. Because I would love if I could spread this word to people, and you as a content creator can make yourself feel like you're doing something special, that makes me feel good in the process.
Yeah. Well, and then it all spreads around, and you tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and then everybody's busting ghosts for charity.
Yeah, exactly. And so whatever they might be doing, if I could at the end of this say that, I've made a difference, it makes it worth it for me. That's pretty much it. And if it sounds like I inspired you somewhat tonight, and maybe somebody will be listening to this and they'll be like, wow, yeah, I want to do it. And you can find out all about that through Extra Life, or if you want to dive into my DMs, reach out to me and I'll be like, oh, hey, let me get you set up with your local coordinator so we can get you all signed up. And, I've raised out of my 3 sessions something between $300-400, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't sound like a lot, but it's like I only play for like an hour at a time. So, to me, that's a big deal. Even $20 is a big deal to me, but I've done that from 3 sessions, and I'm hoping my goal for this weekend is to raise 200 minimum is my goal. And I have a feeling being on here and the word getting around a little bit, maybe I'll exceed my goal is what
I'm hoping so. I want people to tune in and check it out. I mean, because it's a cool thing to see people coming together to celebrate and have fun playing a game. But I think it's really neat that there's this sort of storytelling going on between different franchises in the process. Like that's something that's really neat about this, right? And I go back to like the trivia game you hosted, like that was the big deal, right? Like because that was one of those big like interactive moments for the franchise in terms of the fans anyway, where like we were all at home and yet there was this really cool thing that you had where all these folks could come out, play trivia. There was a charitable element to that too, if I'm not wrong, correct?
$7,500 raised in one night.
Right. Like, and that's what I'm getting is like, these are cool ways that we can expand out kind of gameplay around Ghostbusting that's charitable. And it lets people from different franchises in different states or different countries and different places. I mean, you don't even have to be in a franchise. You can just be a Ghostbusters fan. And maybe you're the kind of person out there who has said for years, like, I don't really know how to go out and create a franchise and do charitable work, but you do like to play video games and can do that on webcam and do it for money. Extra Life is a really great way to do it. And I think checking out your stream is a good example for folks to sort of see like, what does it look like to run an event like this, to do something along these lines and to do something charitable and fun and interactive.
Yeah. And I got to give a shout out to my players for my groups, by the way, because I would feel really weird if I didn't do that. If people are watching, specifically from their neck of the woods, if their local team is playing, starting, we have Shannon at Windy City, and Shannon is growing into this character in her own right in the Ghostbusters community. I'm so proud of her. So Shannon's representing Windy City this time because Jim Norman fell into a very smelly incident. This is what happens when you tell me you can't play my games, is you get smelly. So Shannon's representing Windy City this time around. James Bria's coming back from Peoria. Jacob's returning from Circle City in Indianapolis. Joe from Atlanta is going to be playing. Peter from Hudson Valley Ghostbusters, which is your, stomping grounds. And joining us this time for the first time is Ryan from NYC. So I have like some of the I got some big heavy hitters playing with really big followings. People that are working on the database project, people that are, really enjoyed in the fandom and whatnot. So, it's really cool. And I'm really excited to be able to give that opportunity to, have really great people play and that are exciting people. And I'm really jazzed about that. And I hope that people watch.
It's a fun list of folks you have involved. And I think in particular, it's cool that you have Ryan joining you this time because Ryan has his own tabletop thing going on in his own
Shoo Boy. I call him Shoo Boy, and there will be an implement in that too in the game, but I won't spoil it.
He's got his own content creation and things going on in terms of board games. And I know he had some tabletop game he was playing the last time I talked to him. It was called like something about being president of the United States.
Yes.
It took up like half of his room of just all these different cards and things. And I said, who are you playing with? And he was like, me. I was like, what? And he's like, I play tons of solo tabletop games. I was like, I had no idea there even was such a thing.
That's a thing.
So it's kind of interesting. But
and my last thing, because this was something we came up with today, is because Shannon asked me, hey, in your universe, how does Answer the Call work? And I had to think about that answer for 3 seconds. And I'm like, I like Answer the Call. Shannon's a major like Holtzman inspired cosplayer. So I was like, all right, well, you're playing in what's called the Bobverse. And the Bobverse very simply is if it happened from a licensed Ghostbusters product, it's canon to our universe, but it might be just taking place in another dimension, if you will. So what was the comic book storyline where everybody met up? Extreme Answer the Call. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about, but I forget what it's called.
Somebody will be yelling at me and you about this later.
Without question.
But that comic book storyline happens. So everybody's familiar that the Answer the Call is out there in the universe. The real Ghostbusters, Extreme Ghostbusters, including my own personal flavor to it, is that the Go-Go Ghostbusters are canon in my universe too, just in their own universe. So Tracy the Gorilla's out there somewhere busting ghosts in what I'm calling the Bobverse. So My only rule for me is let people do their homebrew gear. I don't care. You have a whole universe worth of Ghostbusters stuff to base on. So build your gear as long as you're not coming at me trying to build game breaking stuff like my proton pack shoots missiles. No, no, it doesn't. Sorry. But if you come at me and you have like a legitimate pitch for a proton harpoon gun that you're using to catch like mermaids. Oh yeah, dude. I'm all about it.
Well, that's just the slime tethering device with a harpoon attached to it. Clearly, 10 out of 10. Look at that. You already got your first item. You have, now Jim, I know our time's going to be running short here. So can I at least tell you how people can watch and when? It was literally my next question was, where can people check this out? All
right. So twitch.tv/Bob After Dark Plays. That is going to be happening this upcoming Saturday, which is the 6th. So Saturday, July 6th, 2024 at 8:30 Eastern time, not Central time, because the idiot that created the graphic, Bob Anderson, initially said that it's starting 8:30 Central time, which is not correct. So 8:30 Eastern time is when the game will be happening on the Bob After Dark Twitch channel. I hope everybody could tune in and watch and really come and have a good time. You don't have to donate to be there. You don't have to subscribe to me. You can follow me because follows are free, but you don't have to subscribe to me to be there to watch and enjoy. I really would like people to be there, and I really would love to see me reach my $200 goal this time.
I would like to see that as well, and I will be checking it out because I think that it's a really cool group of people you have coming together, and you're demonstrating something that's kind of like a new model of a way to sort of engage in a fundraising environment from home and do something fun, creative, and Ghostbusters oriented with people who are hundreds or thousands of miles away from you, which I think is so cool. And well, Bob, I want to say thank you so much for jumping on the show and kind of coming on and letting us know what's going on this weekend. Everybody should go out and check it out. And I hope that you'll come back and talk with us soon again about how it went. And we'll find out a little bit more about what you're doing.
Listen, I talk a lot in podcasts, but I don't ever talk in podcasts about my Ghostbusting stuff. I will come back and talk to you whenever you would like me. I absolutely adore your show. And I am I said this at the beginning, and I mean what I say, is you are literally a voice for the fandom that I feel like you don't get from a lot of things. You're there and you're getting to the nitty gritty about events, and you're talking to Ghostbusters about what they do. And because of that, I'm a big fan of what you're doing. So anytime you ever want me for anything, all you have to do is slide in them DMs and be like, hey, Bob, are you available? And assuming I get some sleep, I won't forget about you.
If you keep doing Ghostbusters things, I'll keep asking you to come on and talk about them. Deal?
That sounds like a deal to me. And people could check out my podcast, by the way, Bob After Dark. I talk about spooky stuff, legends, lore, and the supernatural, things that go bump in the night, like weird cryptid stories. But I have a little sense of humor added to it. So check out Bob After Dark wherever you listen to podcasts at.
Yeah, if you're extending beyond being paranormal investigators just into paranormal interest, Bob After Dark has what you need. So
thank you, Jim. And for all the fans out there that are listening to this, thank you for taking time to listening to what I'm doing. I hope to see you on my stream.
Yeah, I hope everybody goes and checks it out. Bob, we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jim. You be good.
That about wraps things up for Extraplasm this week. I want to say one final thank you to Bob Anderson for coming on the show and sharing with us what he'll be up to this weekend. I want to invite you as well to go and take a look at that over at www.twitch.tv/Bob After Dark at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Remember, it's going to be a cool interactive game, and you'll get to see how Ghostbusters RPG works if you've never seen it, and you may even find that it's something you want to do yourself because you might be able to run your own fundraiser. So even if you can't contribute financially to benefiting this one, it's still something to go check out because you may find that it's something cool you can do on your own as well. I want to say thank you again also to Tom and Matt from TCU, who I talked about at the beginning of the show. You guys did an amazing job with your signing, and thank you so much for letting me be part of it. It was a really amazing experience, and I'm overjoyed at the opportunity you gave me, and I hope that we get to talk about it on an upcoming episode soon. Beyond that, I need to say thank you as usual to Brendan Pearce of Badoochi Studios, who provides our logo and visual identity, and apparently also makes amazing Crypt Creepers that you should go get with the promo code Extraplasm to save on shipping. And of course, I need to say thank you to vaporwave artist MAGNAVOX, whose version of Ghostbusters serves as our theme song. Last but not least, I need to thank you for tuning in, for listening, for being a part of this amazing fandom, and doing everything awesome that you do to make this so much fun to have a podcast. It's always great to hear from you all. If you have something you want to share with the podcast, you can reach out to me via Extraplasm at Instagram, on Extraplasm on X, Extraplasm Podcast on Facebook, or extraplaspmpodcast@gmail.com is the other way to reach me. And have a safe and wonderful 4th of July. Have a great time with family and friends. Be safe, though. Don't blow yourself up. Don't cross the streams. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And of course, as Ernie Hudson reminds us every single week,
Try to have fun and always keep on busting. Take care.